Let's create a technical reference drawing for our puzzle. Our learning intentions are to use the application of CAD and CAM in a technology project. Our success criteria will be that you can create a simple 3D part in CAD software, you can replicate that part and modify the result, and you can export the model as a standard drawing. You will need to log into Onshape, and if you don't already have an account, you can set up an account using the guidelines given in the sign up for Onshape document. Once you're into Onshape, you can hit create, and we're going to create a new document, and I'm going to call it Year 9 Puzzle, and press on OK. That will take us to the creation screen where we can create our new document. Before we start, it's always a good idea to check our workspace units are in millimeters, so you may need to change that from inches or whatever it is to millimeters if you haven't already set the default settings. I'm going to press tick on that, and the first thing we will do, and the first step usually, is to create the piece of wood that you're going to be using to create the puzzle. Our piece of wood is 135 millimeters by 44 millimeters. So I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to draw up a rectangle on the top plane. So I'm going to click on the top plane there. Sketch 1 should highlight. Now I'm going to press on top over here, and I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle, making sure that I'm using the corner rectangle. I'm going to click and let go, and I'm going to move my mouse, and I'm going to click over here and let go. That gives me the rough area of my rectangle. I'm now going to use some dimensions, so I'm going to press the dimension tool, and I'm going to click on the top line. I'm going to let go, I'm going to move my mouse up, and then I'm going to type in 135, which is the length of our piece of timber. I'm going to press enter. That will update it to 135 millimeters. I'm now going to press on the dimension key again and do the same to the side, and click over here, and that will be 44 millimeters, and press enter. Now I'd like to move my rectangle so that it sits in the middle of the screen, so that that dot is the very middle of the screen. So what I'm going to do in order to do that is I'm going to draw a line, but it's a special type of line called a construction line. I'm going to hover over this until I find that midpoint of that line there, and I'm going to click. I'm going to let go, and I'm going to move my mouse over to the other side until it finds the midpoint there, and that will lock it to the midpoint. So that line is perfectly halfway between the other lines. I've still got another line going, so I'm going to press the escape key on my keyboard in order to clear that. I'm now going to use this little tool up here to find the midpoint button. If I then click on this line and lock it so that this point here sits on the midpoint of that line, the whole rectangle will move to the middle of the screen. Now that I have my base rectangle, I'm going to sketch or finish my sketch. I'm going to press tick. I'm going to change my view so that I can see it from the side angle, and I'm going to press extrude to extrude my my piece of wood up until it is the right thickness. The thickness that we are currently working with is 19 millimeters. And press tick. So that is the piece of wood we're working with. It's now time to cut a hole out of the middle of it in order to match the puzzle piece. To do that, we're going to draw a sketch. This time our sketch is going to be drawn on top of the piece of wood. So I'm going to click over until the yellow highlights around the top of the piece of wood, and I'm going to click on that to select it. I'm now going to press the top view so that I'm looking down on my piece of wood. I'm going to draw out a rectangle, and that rectangle I'm just basically going to draw away from this line here. I don't want to connect it to that line there yet. So I'm just going to draw it here, and that is the hole that I'm going to cut through. Now, according to the measurements I have, the dimension of this is going to be, this part here is going to be 20 millimeters. I'm choosing 20 millimeters because the piece of timber is 19 mils thick and it needs to slide through there nice and smoothly. So an extra millimeter is a good idea. So I'm going to press on tick on that. I'm now going to set out the width of this, and the width of our timber is 44. So we're going to add an extra millimeter there as well and make it 45. And press tick. Now what I need to do is I need to be able to lock this to the middle. In order to do this, I need to set the dimension by using a line, which is a construction line. If I draw a line from the middle of this point here, this line here, and I connect it to the middle of the piece of wood, like so, I press escape, and then I use the horizontal constraint tool. Sorry, wrong one. I'm going to undo that. I don't want to use the horizontal, I want to use the vertical constraint tool. The vertical constraint tool, that will lock it perfectly to the middle. I can do the same thing to lock it to the side, from there to there, like so. Press escape to get rid of that extra drawing, and this time I use the horizontal tool. Don't know why that's not clicking. I can also just check my dimension by clicking on here and clicking on this one and then this line here, like so, and that will be needing to be set to 12 millimeters. Now that I've done that, I can press the tick button. I can change my view back on this corner here so that I can see the whole thing. And now I'm going to press the extrude button again. I'm going to select that rectangle in the middle. That should show me an extra thing coming out, but I don't want to have something coming out. I want to remove it. So I'm going to choose to remove it using the remove tool. I'm now going to press tick, and now I have my piece of wood for the middle one. What I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to add a fillet to each of the corners, and this is just an appearance thing. You don't need to do this, but I'm going to choose each of the corners like so, and I might want to just rotate it around until I can see that other corner and click on that one as well. And I'm going to use, let's just use a 10 millimeter fillet to press tick on that, and that's just going to make a nice rounded edge on my my part. So now if I go to top view, you can see that I'm looking down on what my part will look like. I'm now going to replicate this part twice. To replicate, I'm going to use the transform tool. The transform tool has a number of different ways that I can transform my part. I'm going to translate by X, Y, and Z. Entities to transform or copy is highlighted in blue, which means I need to click on something to select it, and that's going to be part 1. If I move it up, so I'm going to click and drag to move it up till it's a little bit above there, like so, and I'm going to move it 50 millimeters to be sure, just to be sure, and I'm going to use copy part and press tick. I now have 2 parts. I'm going to do the same thing again, the transform tool. This time I'm going to use transform by X, Y, Z, but I'm going to move it down, so negative 50, and I'm going to copy the part. So I now have 3 parts that I'm looking at. The top part has a cut through the middle, which has a 20 mil part. So let's draw that. I'm going to draw a sketch on the top part. I might zoom out. So if I zoom out over here and then zoom back in over here, it will make it easier for me to see. I'm going to press the corner rectangle radius tool, and I'm going to click from here, and I'm just going to move it over about that far for the time being. I'm then going to draw a construction line. The construction line is going to be from the midpoint of this line here to the midpoint of this one here, like so. I'm going to press escape to cancel any more lines, and then I'm going to use the vertical tool to line that up perfectly with the middle. I'm now going to set my dimension on this one here to be 20 millimeters. And I'm going to press tick on that sketch. Now that I've got that, I'm going to look at this from this view here. I'm going to use the extrude tool. I'm going to click on that rectangle and I'm going to choose remove and tick. You can now see that I've got that part all ready to go as well, as per what we've seen when we look at the puzzle. I'm now going to do the same thing with the bottom part. So I'm going to click on sketch. I'm going to draw this one here. I'm going to look at the top view, and this time I'm just going to zoom in on that one there. It helps if you zoom out somewhere over here, like so, and then zoom in here. It brings it more to the middle. So I'm going to click on corner rectangle. I'm going to draw a box like so. Doesn't really matter about the size at the moment. I'm going to draw my construction line again from the midpoint of this one to the midpoint of that line there. And once again, I'm going to use the vertical tool to make it vertical. And this time I'm going to do dimensions. So I'm going to do the dimension tool. And I'm going to click on here and set this, might put that out there so I can read it, to be 14. I'm going to then press tick, go out to this view, and I'm going to extrude that as a remove. And press tick. I now have my 3 puzzle parts and they're all ready to go. If I wanted to 3D print those puzzle parts, I would need to right click over here and I would need to export on each one. So this is part 1. I would choose to export it. I would call this puzzle part 1. The format would be STL. The unit would be millimeters. You might need to change that from meters to millimeters or from inches to millimeters. It needs to be a millimeter. It's going to download. I'm going to press on OK, and eventually I'll get a download, and that I can send to the printer, and it will print just part 1, which is this one here. If I wanted to laser cut a guideline for this, I could right click on that surface there to choose that one, and I could export it as a DXF or drawing. I would choose DXF. I would then choose and write puzzle part 1, and I would click on export, and that will download, and that can be sent to the laser cutter, and it will cut out a template for us to be able to draw around and get our puzzle piece marked out very quickly. The thing we are going to do, however, is we're going to create a drawing. So I'm going to create a new element here called a drawing. And the drawing is this one here. And I'm going to choose my template. So I'm going to show on shape template drawings. And I'm going to choose one that is an A3, ISO A3 standard size template drawing, and press on OK. So it's going to ask me what I'm going to include as my parts, and I'm going to click on Parts Studios and click on, so that one little button there, and then click on that one there as my base drawing. I'm going to change to top view, and if I look at this now, it's going to be that big if I click on it. I'm going to make mine 1:1, so 1:1 size. So this is drawing it at scale. And I need to click on here and just choose automatic again, just so that it updates the size of my drawing, and you can see how big it's going to be there. And I'm going to press on that, and I'm happy with that location of that drawing. I'm now going to press escape to get rid of any other drawings. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a view. At this time, I'm going to choose isometric. and I'm going to basically click it over here so that we can see what it's going to look like from a 3D perspective. I'm now going to put all the important dimensions on this part here. So I'm going to go from this line here to this line here. I'm going to go from this line here to this line here. I'm going to go from this line here to this line here. And you need to place these so that they're nice and neat. I might choose this line here to this line here. And this is just putting all the dimensions on that I think I might need. It might be nice if I put on the dimension of the radius of that end there. I think I might need a thickness. Oh, I've got a thickness. I might need this distance from here to here. And I probably need this distance from here to here. Now you can see that I'm looking at this from a long way off. As I zoom up, it makes more sense as to where I'm putting all the information. The final thing I need to do is I need to zoom up on this section here. And I just need to double click in here and add the title. This will be called my Year 9 puzzle. You should notice that your name is already in here and it's drawn by, and this is the date it was drawn. We don't need to fill out any other details at this point in time, although you may want to put in things like the drawing number in future and that sort of stuff, what material you're going to make it out of, all that useful information that you could put in there. So that's your drawing. The final thing you're going to do is you're going to right click on this panel here and you're going to export it. It's going to export as a PDF and you're going to give it called the Year 9 puzzle. And that file name will go export. That will download to your computer. And when you've downloaded that to your computer, that is what you'll need to submit via Simon.